Friends, just imagine a world where petrol pumps are deserted, where the gene of inflation is bottled, and your car runs on ordinary tap water or kitchen waste instead of expensive fuel. Does this sound like a scene from a science fiction movie? We might find it funny today. But in the 1980s and 90s, there was a man in the US state of Utah who did it. A man who shocked the entire world's oil lobby and a trillion-dollar industry. His name was Paul Pantone, an ordinary-looking man, but he had a secret that could change the face of the earth. He developed an engine that he called GEET. It was no ordinary machine. It was a plasma reactor that could convert water, vinegar, and even waste oil into energy. But this question is, if this invention was so great, why don't we all have this engine in our cars today? Why was Paul Pantone declared a madman and locked up in a mental hospital instead of becoming the world's greatest inventor? Paul Pantone's claim was simple but incredible. He modified an old lawnmower engine and connected it to a glass bottle. He poured 80% water and 20% gasoline into the bottle. When he started the engine in front of people, they were amazed. Not only was the engine running, but the smoke coming out of its exhaust was gone. Paul put his nose to the engine pipe in front of everyone and took a deep breath. He proved that the air coming out of this engine was even cleaner than the normal city air. He would smile and say, "I have cracked the code of nature. Now the poor will not have to sell their lives for fuel." But he did not know that this same smile would soon turn into tears. Friends, Paul Pantone's GEET engine was no longer just a garage invention. The news had spread like wildfire. People were flocking to it from all over the world. And not just ordinary people, but also people wearing suits and boots and driving flashy cars. It is said that Paul was offered millions of dollars by major oil companies and car manufacturers. They had one demand: "Paul, sell us the technology and then forget about it." But Paul Pantone was made of a different clay. His answer was simple: "I created this technology for humanity, so that the poor farmer would not have to worry about expensive oil. If I sold it to you, you would lock it in a safe and the world would never be free." He said no, and that was the day he signed his death warrant. When greed did not work, fear was the way to go. Paul started receiving threats. A web of cases was created against him in the courts that he could not handle. The man who had dedicated his entire life to a better tomorrow was called a fraud and a swindler. His family, his friends, and even his closest associates began to abandon him one by one or were intimidated away. Paul was left alone, but his courage was still not broken. Paul once said in an interview, "They can imprison my body, but how will they imprison the truth that I have shown the world?" He had no idea how cruel the system could be. In 2005, something happened that made humanity bow its head in shame. Paul Pantone was taken to court in a case that was not intended to punish him, but to prove him insane. The judge ordered him to be sent to a mental institution instead of jail, saying that he claimed that he could run an engine with water was evidence of his mental imbalance. Just think, a mind that was going to give the world free energy, locked up in a lunatic ward so that it could never rise again. Friends, going to prison is one thing, but locking a healthy and intelligent person among the incense is like killing the soul. Paul Pantone was placed in the section of Utah State Hospital where dangerous criminals and the mentally ill were housed. The hand that had mapped out the technology that would save the world was now in handcuffs, and drugs were being forcibly injected into those veins that would destroy a person's ability to think and understand. It is sad that Paul was treated like an animal inside the hospital. He was forced to take psychotropic drugs that he did not need. His weight began to drop rapidly. His teeth began to fall out and his health deteriorated. But what was the most painful thing? The administration would tell him the same thing. Paul, just sign a paper that your invention was a lie and that you are a mental patient. We will release you. They wanted to break him. They wanted him to strangle his own truth with his own hands. But Paul Pantone's determination was stronger than a mountain. He accepted being broken but not lying. When the outside world found out what was happening to Paul, a wave broke out. A free Paul Pantone companion began on the internet. People asked if he was crazy. Then who are the hundreds of people who came to him and saw his engine running with their own eyes? Paul's son and a few of his loyal friends continued the legal battle. They proved that keeping Paul there was not a medical necessity, but a political and economic conspiracy. Friends, the truth cannot be held in prison for long. In 2009, after years of legal battle and public outcry, the court finally recognized that it was illegal to forcibly hospitalize Paul Pantone. Paul was free, but he was not the Paul who had gone to the hospital. The name who had once had a storm of energy, now his own physical system had responded. Years of unnecessary medication and mental torture had rendered his organs useless. After leaving the hospital, Paul did not give up. He decided that if he could not take this technology to market himself, he would teach it to the world for free. He made his formulas, map, and GEET engine designs open source on the internet. He used to say, "They can kill me, but they can't kill the knowledge that thousands of people now have." He lectured and held workshops until the day he died, so that no other Paul Pantone could be broken by these conspirators. On 14 December 2015, Paul Pantone left this world. A man who dreamed of changing the world, he himself became a victim of the world's indifference. No major media channel reported his death. No government offered condolences, but he still lives on in the hearts of thousands of farmers and mechanics spread across the world who still run their engines on the principles he created. Friends, the story of Paul Pantone is not just the story of an engine. It is the story of a system that never wants to give us cheap and clean fuel because it will bring down their oil empire. Paul Pantone is no longer with us today, but his question lives on. Are we truly ready for new inventions? Or do we still want to be slaves to the powers that be who lock our progress in their closets? If you think Paul was wronged, share his story with others so that the world can know what a true inventor is worth.